Traveling by bike is the best way to travel. Multi-day bike tours allow me to travel slowly enough to really absorb the culture and landscape of the place I'm visiting, but also not so slowly that I never get anywhere. One of the great things about bicycle touring is the bike carries all my gear, and in this video I'll be adding a rack and some bags to a bike to get it ready for some long rides. The folks over at Ortlieb were nice enough to provide me with some of the accessories I'll be using in this video, but the opinions expressed are all my own. I'll first discuss what to look for in a touring bike, show the gear installation, and share some early impressions at the end. Stick around if you're interested in adding racks or bags to your bike. I would argue any bike I take on a bike trip can be a touring bike, but some will make the process a whole lot easier than others. I've seen people go on bike trips on a variety of different bikes, from small-wheeled folding bikes to mountain bikes to carbon road bikes with a trailer. Many different types of bikes can be set up for touring, so not owning a purpose-built touring bike is not a deal breaker. But bikes designed and sold specifically for the purpose of bike touring do have certain attributes that help make setting them up heavily loaded for long trips easier. They tend to prioritize durability, comfort, and carrying capacity over other things like speed and weight. Here are a few things that I look for in a bike that I think make it a good candidate for touring. First, I like the bike to have wider tires. They don't have to be enormous, but bike touring almost always involves taking some unpaved or beat-up roads, and I prefer not to struggle with super skinny tires. Wider tires, in my experience, are also more comfortable for long days of riding and don't get flats as often. Secondly, I look for bikes that have lots of eyelets for mounting gear. They make it simple to add racks, water bottle cages, fenders, and many other accessories. There are plenty of workarounds for bikes that don't have mounts, but I prefer bikes that do, and a huge range of bikes have them, including many vintage mountain bikes, cyclocross bikes, and hybrids. A couple additional considerations for touring are durability and ease of upkeep. For shorter trips to developed areas, I wouldn't worry about durability a whole lot, but longer trips somewhere remote increase the chances of something breaking far away from a bike shop. Maintainability is also a concern because if something were to break, I may have to fix it myself, so I stay away from exotic, boutique-y components that are difficult to service on the road. Call me old-fashioned, but you'll never find me bleeding hydraulic brakes at the top of a mountain. The bike I'm working with today was definitely designed with bike touring in mind. The model name is Safari, made by Novara, which was the old name of REI's house brand. It has a wide range of gears, high spoke count 26-inch wheels, trekking bars, and lots of eyelets. It's designed to be fairly upright, and most of the components can easily be serviced on the road. Plus, it already has fenders on. Many people prefer a steel bike frame for touring, and that's what I used on my main long-distance bike that I previously made a video about, but aluminum frames could be plenty strong and durable as well. Step 1 will be to add a rack. I will be using the Ortlieb Quick Rack, which, unlike most racks on the market, can be attached and removed in seconds. The nice thing about it is, despite being easily removable, it is still very strong and supports up to 20 kilos or 44 pounds. The first step is to attach these knobs to the lower rack mounts. The lower portion of the rack locks around these knobs but is still able to pivot. It is then held in place on top with a quick-release plastic strap attached to the frame, or it can also be attached to the seat post. The strap needs to be tensioned and locked down with a small screw, and the rack's single metal strut needs to be set to my frame size and tightened using these two bolts. Once that's done, the rack is secured firmly but can also be taken off or put on in seconds. With the rack installed, I can now add some bags. I can go with my usual set of back roller panniers, but Ortlieb sent me a newer version to try out. These gravel packs are a little bit more streamlined with no internal pockets, but do have a slightly smaller carrying capacity, combining for 29 liters total for the pair. They're actually closer in size to a pair of front panniers like the Sport Roller. A nice innovation is that they include two hooks at the bottom instead of the usual one to attach them more securely to the rack. Ortlieb also makes this handy bag for the top of the rack called the Trunk Bag RC. It attaches like so to the top of the quick rack, but has adjustable rails to fit just about any rack. It is quick to attach and holds on fairly firmly. The top of the bag has a roll top with a Velcro closure. It has one large internal space and provides 12 liters of storage volume. For the front of the bike, I have the fork mounts to run a lowrider rack and use the typical 4-pannier style of touring. Instead, I will be going with the Ortlieb fork packs. They don't fit as much as panniers, but also require much less hardware and make the front of the bike a lot less bulky and easier to handle. They do require a plastic adapter to be mounted to the fork. My fork doesn't have the usual 3-hole setup to mount a typical fork rack, but having the lowrider hole allows me to get one bolt into the fork and then use the supplied metal clamp to firmly attach it to the fork leg. First, the clamp got some rubber housing heat shrunk to it. Then I wrapped it around my fork and fed it through the small metal attachment. I secured the adapter to the fork mount and attached it to the metal clamp. Once the adapters are attached, the fork pack just clicks into place. Now with these bags, the bike is ready to carry a significant amount of gear. I'll need to take it on a few trips before deciding how well it all works together, but here are some early impressions. The quick rack is surprisingly sturdy and firm considering the single top rail. Part of me worries about having too many important fixtures made out of plastic, until I remember that the hardware on my other Ortlieb bags is plastic as well, and has served me well for thousands of miles. I really like the quick removal and attachment, which would make traveling with this rack extra convenient. Installing the rack is not complicated, but there are a few issues worth noting. For starters, it won't fit all frames. I tried to install it on this bike as well, but the dropout was in the way of the rack leg, and it wouldn't work with the frame's mount. There is, however, an option to get a separate adapter that attaches to the stays instead of the rack mounts. The platform is also a little on the smaller side, so not all bags and attachments will fit. Lastly, my fender struts needed to fit in the same holes as the ones used to hold the rack in place. The struts were sort of in the way during attachment and slowed me down a little bit. Removing the rack was still lightning fast though. What's really nice about this setup is how modular it is. I can use the rack with the gravel packs or move them down and add the trunk bag. I could use the trunk bag alone for shorter rides around the neighborhood, or take the whole thing off and ride the bike unloaded. The gravel packs are a nice option to use when I don't need to carry as much gear. They are quite a bit lighter than the back rollers I usually use, and the extra hook at the bottom will keep them from rattling off on rougher roads. Like other Ortlieb panniers, they are quick and easy to attach and remove. Pretty much every part they are made out of is able to be replaced. The fork packs are probably the bag that I'm most excited to use. They have this super quick lever to remove and a satisfying click when installed. They don't have a ton of carrying capacity, with mine coming in at 4.1 liters each, but there's also a 5.8 liter option available. I plan to use them for things like my rain gear, which I have been stuffing into a dry bag and strapping onto the bike. The fork packs are a much more user-friendly way to carry small layers and other things like that. Here's an example of what I was able to fit inside just one of them. A packable down jacket, waterproof socks, arm warmers, packable raincoat, and my leg warmers. Installation wasn't too complex, but I did find the legs of my fork were a bit more narrow than intended, so I ended up having to cut the shrink wrap a little bit with an X-Acto knife and then cut the excess tabs off with my cable cutters. The fork pack, along with the gravel packs and trunk bag RC, are all waterproof, so using this setup in the rain would be no problem. The only thing I would want to add to this bike to really get it dialed in for touring is a front bag like the one I have on my other touring bike, along with some of these water bottle bags for quick access items I like to store close at hand. That's it for now, but check out my other bike touring focused videos on my channel. Leave a comment if you found this video useful, and thanks for watching.